Former Army Secretary Luis Caldera speaking out about Trump's use of troops. He is one of 8 high-level military officials who filed a legal brief opposing Trump's use of active duty Marines in Los Angeles. They write in part, quote, "The risks of politicalization under these circumstances are profound and not speculative, especially where the president has, in his official capacity, overtly pitted the military against his professed political opponents." It's a warning that Trump has already crossed a red line. This week, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth hinted the administration may maintain troops in the streets even if a court ruled it illegal.
If the court says this deployment of troops into our cities is not legal, would you follow that court's order?
It's pending in the courts, Senator.
Well, when the court decides, would you follow that court's order decision?
I don't believe district courts should be determining national security policy.
So you will not be following that.
When it goes to the Supreme Court, we'll see.
This is a dramatic break with long-standing principles espoused by veterans, elected officials from both parties, and presidents.
The president cannot put troops in for law enforcement in the United States.
The option to use active duty forces in a law enforcement role should only be used as a matter of last resort.
Active duty troops are trained for warfighting and not policing.
Don't do it with the Army because it's illegal.
The president cannot put troops in for law enforcement in the United States without either declaring the situation an insurrection or being asked to do so by the governor of a particular state.
Former Army Secretary Luis Caldera joins me now. Okay, thank you so much for being with us here tonight on The Beat. I'm going to say this as someone who was recently in Los Angeles, saw these troops being moved in. It was horrifying. It was horrifying. It looks like the kind of thing that we say is not supposed to happen in the United States. So just at a basic level for everybody to understand, why is it a bad idea to have the Army engaged in policing in a domestic American city?
Well, there's a number of reasons that we expressed to the court in an amicus brief. Those of us who are retired senior military and senior defense officials. And the most important one is that the military needs to focus on its core mission, which is being trained and ready to fight and win the nation's wars. Right. When they're used for anything other than training, maintaining their equipment, working with allies, you're degrading their readiness and capabilities. But when you use them, they're not supposed to be used for domestic law enforcement. There are laws against that, the Posse Comitatus Act. When you do that, you run tremendous risks. And so are the risks worth it? And we don't think the risks are worth it. They could end up being either physically attacked themselves or in a position where they have to defend themselves. Now they're confronting members of the public. It risks the military being seen as politicized, as favoring one party or favoring the president as opposed to the Constitution and the nation, especially when protesters, those who are not violently but who are peacefully protesting policies of the president or right they have under the Constitution. And we're concerned that can undermine support for the military, including its budgets, recruitment, its use in when we truly do need to deploy our forces to defend our country.
So I'll put this at even sort of a more basic level. The Army is prepared to kill people, right? And that shouldn't be your first response or concern when dealing with protesters, right? Certainly not sort of domestic protesters in the United States, correct?
Right. Well, they're not trained for, to lower tensions in civilian-type law enforcement situations. It's very different. I mean, they do have to follow the law and the law of war, which includes dealing with refugees and people who've surrendered and things like that. But they are not trained for civilian law enforcement. And there are other forces, including federal law enforcement, state and city law enforcement, available to do that. Neither the Sheriff's Department, the LAPD, or anyone else said that they were overwhelmed and unable to deal with this with their own civilian forces.
With your experience, not just in this country, but looking at how we've had to view the world, how the United States has had to play a role in the world, if this were happening in an allied country, right? If we saw the Prime Minister of England send the army into Manchester, if we saw, the President of France, if we were to see this happening in an allied nation, what would the concerns of the United States be? Because my thoughts are our allies, our NATO allies are watching this right now. They can't be happy, right?
Well, you don't want to. I mean, one of the concerns is that you can significantly lower the bar to ever deploying military forces once you've done this. You know, the president has said, well, we're unable to execute federal law. It's not clear that they tried all the other things they could have tried short of deploying military forces. But once you have military forces there with military equipment, with military weapons, it's a show of force. It's an intimidation of the public. It feels like a militarized country. That's not what we want in our nation. And it doesn't leave like a good model, right? And when we're talking about sort of democracy and freedom of speech in other places. Well, there are many things that, unfortunately, this administration has done that are not a great model for support of democracy, for support of human rights, for support of international law and even U.S. domestic law. But yes, it does not send the right message. When we lower our standards, it makes any would-be autocrat, gives them license to lower theirs. I want to play this sound real quick from Secretary Pete Hegseth and Warren in an exchange on domestic military deployment, and get your thoughts right after this.
How about if the president says he wants to send troops to 15 cities? Would you be willing to do that?
Senator, I don't accept your hypothetical because
That's a hypothetical.
Not a real
That's
one.
the question. You're the Secretary of Defense. Would you send troops to 15 cities if the president said do it? Would you do it? 15 cities.
Again, Senator, it's a complete hypothetical lacking any context
Look,
at all.
You're the Secretary
and I refuse to
of
box
Defense.
myself in based on questioning on a hypothetical.
But you're here asking for $1 trillion, and I want to know how you're going to spend it.
He's lying, right? I mean, this is not a hypothetical. The president has said that he wants to send troops to multiple cities to fight the invasion, right? Well, the president has said that, and here's the challenge. If you say one thing like, we're going to put troops around a federal building to protect the federal building, well, you probably could do that with other local police or other federal law enforcement officers. But let's say that you do that to protect that building. That's one thing. Mm-hmm. If you're saying, I'm going to send troops out to accompany ICE agents as they go on raids on farms or factories or at schools, that's a different thing. Now you're involved. Now you're directly involving the military in enforcement of immigration laws, right? And so I think we don't want to lower the bar for how easily you can deploy troops. It's probably possible that any protest, including, the No Kings protest, right. that the president could say, oh, there are some federal laws being violated, and therefore, in order to enforce those laws, I've got to send military troops to those locations. And, this is just as President Trump can point to what President Bush did in 1992 in response to the LA riots at the invitation of the governor of California. Some future president is going to be able to point to President Trump's actions and say, in other much less demanding circumstances, I can send troops.